The night Clara Sutton broke into the Black Hollow Bank, she wasn't thinking about survival anymore. She was thinking about vengeance. Behind her, Cole Mercer stood frozen, his daughter's future hanging by a thread. In front of her, Roland Voss smiled like a man who'd already won. But Clara had spent 34 years being underestimated, and tonight, that would finally matter. This is the story of a woman who rebuilt herself from ash and sourdough starter. If you stay until the end, you'll see how one kitchen changed an entire valley. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. The stagecoach lurched to a stop, and Clara Sutton's stomach lurched with it. Through the dust-caked window, she could see them already. 3 women clustered outside the general store, their heads tilted together like vultures sizing up roadkill. One of them pointed. Another covered her mouth, though not quickly enough to hide the smile. Clara knew that smile. She'd seen it her whole life. The driver yanked open the door. "Black Hollow, ma'am." "Thank you." Clara's voice came out steadier than she felt. She gathered her skirts, plain brown wool, already showing the dirt from 2 weeks of travel, and stepped down. Her boots hit the street, and she heard it clearly. "Lord have mercy, that's her?" Clara didn't turn. She'd learned young that turning only gave them a better view. Instead, she focused on the buildings lining the street. Weathered wood, half of them empty, paint peeling like sunburned skin. Black Hollow looked exactly like what it was. A town dying slow. "You Clara Sutton?" She turned. A man stood there, maybe 60, with the kind of face that had seen too much sun and not enough sleep. His vest hung loose on a frame that had probably been bigger once. "I am. Hiram Cobb. Got a telegram you'd be coming." He didn't offer his hand. "Cole Mercer sent me to fetch you. Ranch is 6 miles out." "I appreciate it," Hiram grunted, already turning toward a wagon that had seen better decades. "Got another trunk?" "Just the one." Clara gestured to the battered leather case the driver was hauling down. "And this?" She cradled the wooden box in her arms like it was made of glass. Hiram's eyes flicked to it. "What's that?" "Something I couldn't leave behind." He didn't push. Maybe he understood that everyone who came west was running from something. He loaded her trunk with efficiency, then climbed up onto the wagon seat. Clara settled herself beside him, the wooden box still in her lap. They rolled out of town, and Clara felt the stairs following her like heat. "They always this friendly?" she asked. Hiram snorted. "They're curious. Mercer hasn't brought anyone new to the ranch since—" He trailed off. "Since his wife died." "Yeah." Hiram's hands tightened on the reins. 2 years now. Bad business, that. Fever took her fast. Clara had read the letter Cole Mercer sent 3 times before she'd answered it. Need housekeeper, room and board, $30 monthly, cooking required, child in house. It wasn't poetry. But it was honest, and honestly was something Clara had learned to value. "What's he like?" she asked. "Mr. Mercer." Hiram was quiet for so long Clara thought he might not answer. Finally, "He's a good man having a hard time. Loved his wife something fierce. When she went, part of him went with her. And Ivy, that's the little girl. She hasn't spoken since the day her mama died." Clara's chest tightened. "Not at all?" "Not one word. Doc says there's nothing wrong with her throat. It's her heart that's broken." They rode in silence after that, the wagon creaking beneath them. The land opened up, rolling hills covered in dry grass, mountains dark against the horizon. It should have been beautiful. Instead it felt empty, like the whole valley was holding its breath. The sun was low and they finally turned onto a narrow road marked by a weathered sign, Mercer Ranch. The house appeared slowly, a 2-story structure that might have been handsome once. Now the porch sagged, shutters hung crooked, and the paint had faded to the color of old bones. Behind it, Clara could see a barn with half its roof missing and fences that leaned like drunks. "You know it looks this bad?" Clara asked. Hiram's mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. "He knows. Just stopped caring about fixing what keeps breaking." The wagon stopped in front of the house. Clara climbed down before Hiram could offer help. She'd learned that too, not to wait for hands that might not come. The front door opened. Cole Mercer stepped onto the porch, and Clara's first thought was that he looked exactly like his ranch. Something strong that had taken too much damage. Tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 40. Dark hair going gray at the temples. Eyes that had probably been kind once. Now they were just tired. "Miss Sutton." His voice matched his appearance, rough, worn down. "Mr. Mercer." Clara climbed the porch steps, still holding her wooden box. "Thank you for the opportunity." "Hiram tell you about Ivy?" "He did." Cole studied her face like he was trying to read something written there. Whatever he was looking for, Clara wasn't sure he found it. "I'll be straight with you. This isn't an easy situation. The house is a mess. The work is hard. And my daughter—" He stopped, jaw working. "She needs someone patient." "I can be patient. Can you cook?" "Yes." "Good cook or just competent?" Clara met his eyes. "Good enough that people used to cross town for my bread." Something flickered in his expression. Might have been interest. Might have been doubt. "We'll see. Hiram, help me with her trunk." The inside of the house was worse than the outside. Dust covered everything. Dishes were piled in a dry sink. The floors were tracked with mud, and God knew what else. In the front room, a sofa sat buried under stacks of newspapers and a child's drawings. But it was the kitchen that made Clara's hands curl into fists. The stove was crusted with grease. The counters were warped from water damage. Broken jars lined the shelves, their contents long since spoiled. Someone had tried to cook here recently. There was a pot on the stove with something burned black at the bottom, but it had been a losing effort. "I know it's rough," Cole said behind her. He sounded defensive, ashamed. Clara set down her wooden box and turned to face him. "How long since anyone cleaned this kitchen properly?" "Since Anne died." His voice went flat when he said his wife's name. "I've kept us fed, barely, but I'm not good at—" He gestured vaguely at the mess. "Where's Ivy?" "Upstairs. She doesn't come down much anymore." Clara untied her bonnet. "Mr. Mercer, I'm going to be direct with you. This house needs more than a housekeeper. It needs someone willing to tear it down to the studs and rebuild it properly. I can do that work, but I need to know you'll let me." Cole blinked. "Let you? Let me throw out what's broken. Let me change how things are done. Let me make noise and mess while I'm fixing things." She paused. "And let me try with Ivy, even if it doesn't work right away." For the first time since she'd arrived, something shifted in Cole's face. He looked at her, really looked. Not just at her size or her plain features, but at her. "You always this bold?" he asked. "Only when I'm desperate." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "That makes two of us. Do what you need to do, Miss Sutton. I'm past caring about anything except keeping this place standing another year." Clara nodded. "Then I'll start tonight. But first, I'd like to meet Ivy." Cole's expression shuddered again. "She won't talk to you." "I know. I still want to meet her." He led her upstairs. The second floor was darker, quieter. They stopped outside a closed door and Cole knocked softly. "Ivy, someone's here I want you to meet." Silence. Cole's shoulders dropped. "She does this. I'm sorry." "Don't apologize." Clara stepped forward and spoke through the door. "Ivy, my name is Clara. I'm going to be staying here and helping your father. I won't make you talk if you don't want to, but I hope we can be friends anyway." More silence. Then so quietly Clara almost missed it, the scrape of a chair being moved. Cole heard it too. His eyebrows went up. "I'll be downstairs if you need anything," Clara said to the door. Then she turned and walked back toward the stairs. Behind her she heard Cole whisper, "She never moves when someone new comes." "Maybe she's curious," Clara said. "Maybe." They returned to the disaster that was the kitchen. Hiram had left. Clara heard the wagon pulling away. And she was alone with Cole Mercer and his silent house and the weight of everything she'd run from back east. "Your room's through there," Cole said, pointing to a door off the kitchen. "It's small. Used to be Anne's sewing room. I'm sure it's fine. There's a pump out back for water. Outhouse is past the barn. I'll bring in more firewood before dark." He hesitated. "Anything else you need to know tonight?" Clara looked around the wrecked kitchen, thinking about Victor's fists and his lawyers, and the way he'd looked at her after the last time she'd tried to leave. She thought about the 200 miles between here and Boston and the price he'd put on finding her. "No," she said. "I think I've got what I need." Cole nodded and left her there. Clara stood alone in the kitchen, listening to the house settle around her. Then she opened her wooden box and lifted out the glass jar inside, its contents bubbling gently. Her grandmother's sourdough starter. 100 years old, passed down through 4 generations. The only thing Clara had taken when she'd fled in the night. She held it up to the fading light and whispered, "We made it. Now let's see what we can build." Then she rolled up her sleeves and started cleaning. By midnight, Clara's hands were raw and her back was screaming, but the kitchen counters were clean. She'd hauled out 3 buckets of spoiled food, scrubbed the stove until her knuckles bled, and washed every dish she could find. The floor would take another day. So would the shelves. But it was a start. She heated water and made herself a cup of weak tea, then sat at the small table and let the exhaustion wash over her. Through the window, she could see the dark shapes of the mountains against the stars. Somewhere out there, Victor was looking for her. But for tonight, she was 6 miles from town in a broken house with a grieving widower and his silent daughter, and that was enough distance to let her breathe. A creak on the stairs made her look up. Ivy stood in the kitchen doorway. She was small for 7, all dark hair and serious eyes and a too thin face. She wore a nightgown that had been mended poorly, and her feet were bare. Clara didn't move. "Hello, Ivy?" The girl didn't speak. She just stood there, staring at Clara like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "I made tea," Clara said. "Would you like some? Or milk, if you'd prefer?" Ivy's eyes went to the stove, then to the clean counters. She looked around the kitchen like she didn't recognize it. Clara stayed still, letting the girl process. Finally, Ivy took 3 steps into the room. She pointed at Clara's wooden box on the counter. "That's my sourdough starter," Clara said. "My grandmother gave it to me. It's alive. You have to feed it every day or it dies." Ivy tilted her head. "Would you like to see?" The smallest nod. Clara stood slowly and brought the jar to the table. She opened it, and the sharp, yeasty smell filled the kitchen. "See how it bubbles? That means it's healthy. Happy." Ivy leaned closer, fascinated. "When I was your age," Clara said softly, "I used to help my grandmother bake bread every morning. She said bread was magic because you take flour and water and somehow make something that feeds people, something that matters." Ivy looked up at her. Her eyes were very dark, very serious. "I'm going to bake bread tomorrow," Clara said. "Would you like to help me?" For a long moment, Ivy just stared. Then she turned and walked back toward the stairs without a sound. Clara sat alone in the kitchen and told herself that was fine. That small step still counted. She didn't expect to see Ivy again that night. But an hour later, when Clara finally dragged herself to the small room off the kitchen, she found a drawing slipped under her door. It showed a woman, tall, round, with careful lines around her face. Next to her stood a small girl. Between them, a jar with bubbles rising from it. Clara picked up the drawing with shaking hands and pressed it to her chest. Then she lay down on the narrow bed and let herself cry for the first time since leaving Boston. Not from sadness, from something that felt dangerously close to hope. Clara woke before dawn, which was nothing new. She'd spent 10 years waking before Victor stirred, trying to have coffee ready before he could find a reason to be angry. Old habits. She dressed in the dark and made her way to the kitchen. The house was silent except for the wind outside and the creak of old wood settling. She lit the stove and started water heating. Then she pulled out flour from the supplies Cole had shown her last night. Basic stock, nothing fancy, but it would work. She fed her starter first. That was the rule. Grandmother had been firm about that. Then she began mixing dough. Her hands moved through the familiar motions: flour, water, salt, starter, kneading until the dough turned smooth and elastic. She could do this blind. Had done it, actually, the morning after Victor had blackened her eyes so badly she could barely see. The dough rose while she cleaned more of the kitchen. She found a roasting pan under a pile of rags and scrubbed it until it shone. She organized the shelves, throwing out anything that had spoiled. By the time gray light started showing through the windows, the kitchen smelled like yeast and possibility. The first loaves went into the oven just as she heard footsteps upstairs. Cole appeared in the kitchen doorway and stopped dead. "Is that bread? We'll be in an hour." Clara didn't look up from the second batch she was shaping. "There's coffee on the stove." He poured himself a cup and stood there, watching her work. "When did you start?" 4:30. "You didn't have to—" "Yes, I did." Clara finally looked at him. "Mr. Mercer, I'm not here to do the bare minimum. I'm here to make this house work again. That means real food, not whatever you've been surviving on." Something crossed his face. Might have been gratitude. Might have been grief. Anne used to bake, he said quietly. The house always smelled like this. Claire's hand stilled. I'm sorry. If this is too difficult. No. He shook his head. It's good. I'd forgotten what it felt like, having a kitchen that works. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Cole cleared his throat. I've got to check the fences in the north pasture today. Probably be gone most of the morning. Ivy usually stays upstairs until noon or so. I'll look after her. She won't. I know, but I'll still look after her. Cole studied her over his coffee cup. You're different than I expected. How so? Tougher. He paused. Most women who answered that ad withdrew their applications when they heard about Ivy. Clara shaped another loaf, her hand steady. Most women haven't had their life fall apart and had to rebuild from nothing. I understand what it's like to lose your voice. Cole went very still. What happened to you, Miss Sutton? Nothing I want to discuss before breakfast, Mr. Mercer. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. He drained his coffee and set down the cup. I'll be back by early afternoon. If you need anything, I'll manage. After he left, Clara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. The bread came out of the oven, golden brown and perfect. She set the loaves on the counter to cool and stood there for a moment, just breathing in the smell. This was real. She'd actually made it here. She had a job, a room, a kitchen. She had distance from Victor. It wasn't safety, not yet. Maybe never. But it was something. It smells good. Clara spun around. Ivy stood in the doorway, still in her nightgown, her hair uncombed. Good morning, Clara said, keeping her voice level. Did the smell wake you? Ivy nodded. Would you like some? It's still warm. Another nod. Clara cut a thick slice and spread it with butter from the cold box. She set it on a plate and put it on the table, then poured a cup of milk. Ivy climbed onto a chair and picked up the bread with both hands. She took a bite, and her eyes went wide. Clara busied herself with cleaning up, giving the girl space. She heard Ivy take another bite, then another. When Clara glanced over, the slice was gone, and Ivy was staring at the remaining loaves on the counter. There's plenty more, Clara said. I'll make sure you have fresh bread every day. Ivy looked at her for a long moment. Then she slid off the chair and walked to the counter where Clara's drawing from last night sat. She pointed at it, then at Clara, then at the bread. Yes, Clara said softly. I'm the lady in the picture, and you helped me just by being there. Ivy's expression was unreadable. Then she did something that made Clara's heart stop. She smiled, just a little, just for a second. But it was there. Then she turned and walked back upstairs without a sound. Clara gripped the edge of the counter and told herself she wasn't going to cry again. She'd done enough of that last night. But when she heard the soft creak of Ivy's door closing, she let herself smile too. Small steps, she thought. Small steps still counted. The next 3 days fell into a rhythm. Clara woke before dawn and baked. Cole left early to work the ranch. There was always something broken, always something dying. Ivy came down around mid-morning, ate warm bread, and watched Clara work. She never spoke, but she started staying longer each day. On the fourth morning, Ivy appeared in the kitchen carrying a wooden spoon and a mixing bowl. She set them on the table and looked at Clara expectantly. Clara's throat tightened. You want to help? Ivy nodded. All right then. Clara pulled out the flour. Let me show you how to measure. They worked side by side, Ivy's small hands copying Clara's movements. The girl made a mess, flour everywhere, water spilled, but she was focused in a way that made Clara's chest ache. When the dough was mixed, Clara showed her how to knead. You have to push it, Clara said, demonstrating. Not too hard, but firm, like this. Ivy pressed her hands into the dough tentatively. Good. Now fold it over and push again. They kneaded together, the kitchen quiet except for the sound of their breathing and the soft press of dough against wood. My grandmother taught me this when I was about your age, Clara said. She said bread is patient. It doesn't rush. It takes time to rise, time to bake. But if you're patient with it, it becomes something wonderful. Ivy kept kneading, but Clara saw her listening. I think people are like bread sometimes, Clara continued. We need time to heal, time to rise. But with the right care, she paused. With the right care, we can become strong again. Ivy's hands stilled. She looked up at Clara, and for the first time, Clara saw something raw in those dark eyes. Pain, confusion, loss. The girl opened her mouth like she might speak. Then she closed it again and went back to kneading. Clara didn't push. She just kept working beside her, letting the silence be enough. When the bread came out of the oven hours later, Ivy pointed at the loaves and then at herself. "You want to know if you helped make those?" Clara asked. Nod. "Absolutely. These wouldn't exist without you." Ivy's whole face transformed. She smiled again, bigger this time, more real, and then did something that made Clara's eyes burn. She hugged Clara around the waist, quick and fierce, before darting back upstairs. Clara stood alone in the kitchen with flour on her dress and tears on her cheeks, and the smell of bread filling every corner of the broken house. She thought about Victor, about the life she'd left, about how he'd told her she was worthless, useless, too broken to matter. "Look at me now," she whispered to the empty kitchen. "Look at what I built." Yet, by the end of the second week, word started spreading. It began when Cole took 2 loaves into town to trade for supplies. The storekeeper's wife tried a piece and immediately asked where he'd gotten it. "My housekeeper," Cole said. "Miss Sutton." "That woman who came in on the stage, the big one?" Cole's jaw tightened. "She's an excellent cook." The storekeeper's wife sniffed. "Well, I suppose even plain women have their uses." Cole bought his supplies and left without responding. But when he got back to the ranch, he told Clara what had been said. "Don't let it bother you," he added quickly. "Emma Pritchard is a gossip and a fool." "It doesn't bother me." Clara kept kneading the dough in front of her. "I've heard worse." Cole watched her work. "From who?" "People who mattered more than they should have." He was quiet for a moment. "Your husband?" Clara's hand stilled. She didn't look up. "I never said I had a husband. You wear an indentation where a ring used to be, and you flinch sometimes when I move too fast." Clara finally met his eyes. They were direct but not unkind. "Yes," she said, "I had a husband. Now I don't." "Dead?" "No. But I am, as far as he knows." She went back to kneading. "I prefer to keep it that way." Cole nodded slowly. "Fair enough. But Clara, can I call you Clara?" "Yes." "If he comes looking, you tell me. Understand?" Something warm and unfamiliar bloomed in Clara's chest. "Why would you care?" "Because you're helping my daughter smile again. Because this house feels alive for the first time in 2 years. Because—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Because you matter. Here. To us." Clara had to turn away before he could see her face. "Thank you," she managed. He left her alone after that, but word about the bread kept spreading. The following week, a railroad worker showed up at the door asking if he could buy a loaf. Clara sold him 2. The next day, 3 miners arrived, then a ranch family from 10 miles south. By the end of the month, Clara was baking 12 loaves every morning and still running out. "You should charge more," Cole said one evening, watching her count the day's earnings. "I'm charging enough." "You're undervaluing yourself." Clara looked at him sharply. "I'm charging what people can afford. These are working folks, not Boston society." "Boston?" Cole's eyes sharpened. "That where you're from?" Clara cursed herself for the slip. "It doesn't matter. It does if someone's looking for you. No one knows where I am." "Clara, please." She met his eyes. "Don't ask questions I can't answer. Not yet." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but the offer stands. If you need help, you tell me." "I will." She wouldn't. She couldn't risk bringing her past down on this family, but it was kind of him to offer. Late that night, Clara was cleaning the kitchen when she heard Ivy scream. She ran upstairs and found Cole already in Ivy's room, holding the girl while she sobbed into his shoulder. Clara had never heard Ivy make a sound before, and the raw grief in those cries cut straight through her. "Nightmare," Cole said over Ivy's head. His eyes were haunted. "She gets them. Dreams about her mother." Clara stood in the doorway, uncertain. Could you make some warm milk?" Cole's voice was rough. "Sometimes that helps." Clara fled downstairs and heated milk with a little honey stirred in. When she brought it up, Ivy had quieted to small hiccups. Cole took the cup. "Thank you." Clara started to leave, but Ivy's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. The girl looked at her with red-rimmed eyes and pulled. "She wants you to stay," Cole said, sounding surprised. Clara sat carefully on the edge of the bed. Ivy immediately curled against her side, still clinging to Cole with one hand but pressing close to Clara with the rest of her small body. They sat like that, the three of them in the dark room, Ivy between them, while the girl slowly stopped shaking. "Tell me about the bread," Cole said suddenly. Clara blinked. "What?" "Tell her about the bread. About your grandmother. Something calm." So Clara did. She talked about her grandmother's kitchen in Pennsylvania, about learning to bake as a little girl, about the way dough felt alive under her hands. She talked about the sourdough starter, how it had been passed down through generations, how it connected her to women she'd never met. Ivy's breathing slowly evened out. Clara kept talking anyway, her voice low and steady. She talked about the different kinds of bread, about how each one had its own personality, about how sometimes the bread didn't rise properly and you had to try again. "Like people," she said softly. "Sometimes we don't rise the first time either, but that doesn't mean we can't try again." Cole's eyes met hers over Ivy's head and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. Eventually Ivy fell asleep, still tucked between them. "I should go," Clara whispered. "Stay a few more minutes, just to be sure." So Clara stayed. She sat in the dark room with this grieving man and his broken daughter and felt something shift inside her chest, something that felt like belonging. It terrified her, because belonging meant roots, and roots meant she'd have something to lose when Victor finally found her, and he would find her. Men like Victor always did. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Clara was kneading dough when Cole came in from town, his face ashen. He held an envelope like it might bite him. "This was waiting at the post office," he said. "For you." Clara's blood went cold. "Who's it from?" No return address, but the handwriting. He paused. "It looks expensive." Clara's hands were shaking as she took the envelope. She recognized the script immediately. Victor's personal secretary. She tore it open and read, "Mrs. Hale, your absence has been noted and found unacceptable. Mr. Hale expects your immediate return to Boston. He has been more than patient with your little episode, but his generosity has limits. A representative will arrive in Black Hollow within the month to escort you home. Should you refuse cooperation, legal measures will be taken to ensure your return as Mr. Hale's lawful wife. Your marriage vows were sacred. Honor them." Clara's vision tunneled. "Clara?" Cole's voice came from far away. "What does it say?" She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Victor had found her. He was coming. And this time there would be nowhere left to run. The letter slipped from Clara's fingers and drifted to the floor. Cole picked it up, his eyes scanning the words. His face darkened with each line. When he finished, he looked at Clara with an expression she couldn't quite read. "This man," he said quietly. "Your husband. What did he do to you?" Clara's throat felt like sandpaper. "Everything that matters and nothing the law cares about." "Clara, he never broke bones where people could see them." Her voice came out flat, mechanical. "He was careful, strategic. A pillar of Boston society doesn't leave marks that show at dinner parties." Cole's jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. "How long?" 10 years. Clara forced herself to meet his eyes. "I married him when I was 24. My parents had died the year before. Victor was charming, wealthy, respected. I thought I was lucky." "When did it start?" "Our wedding night." The words tasted like ash. "I said something he didn't like. I don't even remember what. He backhanded me across the face and told me I'd learn my place soon enough." Cole set the letter on the table with exaggerated care, like he was fighting the urge to tear it apart. "And you stayed. Where was I supposed to go?" Clara's voice sharpened. "I had no money, no family, no legal standing. In Massachusetts, I was his property. The law said so, the church said so, everyone said so. But you left eventually. 3 months ago, I waited until he traveled to New York on business. I took my grandmother's starter, $40 I'd hidden over 2 years, and the clothes on my back. I've been running ever since." Cole was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder. He can't take you back if you don't want to go. He can do whatever he wants. He has lawyers, money, judges in his pocket. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. I knew this was temporary. I knew I couldn't hide forever. I just hoped I'd have more time. So that's it? Cole's voice rose. You're just going to let him win? What choice do I have? You fight. He stepped closer. You stay here, and you fight. I can't ask you to get involved in this. You have Ivy to think about. Ivy loves you. The words came out harsh, desperate. Do you know that? My daughter hasn't smiled in 2 years, and then you show up and suddenly she's kneading bread and sleeping through the night, and this morning I heard her humming. Humming, Clara. So don't tell me I can't get involved. You're already involved with us. Clara's eyes burned. If I stay, he'll destroy you too. That's what he does. He finds what you care about and he burns it down. Then we burn him first. You don't understand what you're saying. I understand that you're standing in my kitchen talking about running like it's inevitable. Cole's hands curled into fists at his sides. I understand that my daughter finally has something to wake up for. And I understand that you deserve better than spending your whole life afraid. Clara wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly her chest ached, but she'd learned the hard way that wanting things didn't make them true. I need to think, she said. Alone. Cole looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he nodded stiffly and left the kitchen. Clara stood there surrounded by the smell of rising dough and the ruins of her temporary safety. Then she did what she always did when the world fell apart. She started baking. Her hands moved through the familiar motions while her mind raced. Victor would send someone within the month, maybe less. Once they confirmed her location, he'd use every legal tool at his disposal to drag her back. And there were many tools. A wife who abandoned her husband could be institutionalized for hysteria, could be arrested for theft if he claimed she'd stolen from him, could be declared mentally unfit and remanded to his custody. She'd seen it happen to other women, wives who tried to leave and found themselves locked in asylums, their own families signing the papers. The dough beneath her hands grew smooth and elastic, but Clara barely noticed. She could run again, take what little money she'd saved and disappear into another territory. Change her name again. Find another town desperate enough not to ask questions. But the thought of leaving Ivy made her stomach turn. And Cole. When had he started mattering? Clara? She turned. Ivy stood in the doorway wearing her nightgown, her hair tangled from sleep. She was holding the drawing she'd made that first night. Hey, sweetheart. Did I wake you? Ivy shook her head. She walked over and held out the drawing. Clara took it with flour-dusted fingers. You want me to have this? Ivy nodded. Then she did something that broke Clara's heart clean in half. She wrapped her arms around Clara's waist and pressed her face against Clara's apron. And she spoke. Her voice was rusty, barely more than a whisper, but the words were clear. Don't leave. Clara's knees nearly buckled. She dropped to a crouch, bringing herself eye level with the girl. Ivy, you're talking. Don't leave. Ivy repeated, tears streaming down her face. Please don't leave like Mama did. Oh, honey. Clara pulled her close. Your mama didn't want to leave. She got sick. Everyone leaves. Ivy's small hands fisted in Clara's dress. Everyone goes away. Clara held her and felt something crystallize inside her chest. Something hard and certain. She'd spent 10 years letting Victor dictate her choices. 10 years running, hiding, shrinking herself down to nothing. But this little girl had just found her voice again, and Clara would be damned if she was the reason Ivy lost it. I'm not going anywhere, Clara said firmly. You hear me? I'm staying right here. Promise? Clara thought about Victor's letter, about the representative coming to drag her back, about all the ways this could end badly. Then she looked at Ivy's tear-stained face and made a promise she had no idea how to keep. I promise. Cole appeared in the doorway, and the look on his face said he'd heard everything. His eyes met Clara's over Ivy's head, and she saw the question there. She nodded once. Relief washed over his features, followed quickly by determination. Ivy pulled back and wiped her nose on her sleeve. Can we make cinnamon rolls tomorrow? The casual domesticity of the question after such a moment made Clara laugh despite everything. Absolutely. With extra icing? As much as you want. Ivy smiled, the third smile Clara had ever seen from her, and patted back toward the stairs. At the doorway, she turned back. I love you, Clara. Then she was gone, leaving Clara and Cole alone in the kitchen. Well, Cole said after a long moment, guess you can't leave now. Guess not. Clara stood, brushing flour from her skirt. Which means we need a plan. I'm listening. Clara walked to the table and sat down, her mind already working. Victor has money and legal power. We can't beat him in court, and we can't outrun his reach. So we need to change the game. How? I need money of my own. Enough that I'm not dependent on anyone. Enough that I can hire lawyers if needed, or disappear if it comes to that. She looked at him. I need to turn this bread business into something real. Cole pulled out a chair across from her. You're already selling 12 loaves a day. I could sell 50 if I had a proper setup, a real oven, better workspace, someone to help with deliveries. She paused. And I need to do it fast, before Victor's man arrives. That's going to take capital. I know. Clara had been doing the math in her head for weeks. I have $43 saved, not enough. The ranch doesn't have much to spare, but no. Clara shook her head. I won't take your money. This is my problem. Clara. I mean it. She met his eyes. You've given me a job and a place to stay. You've protected me without asking for anything in return. I won't put the ranch at risk because of my past. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, what if it wasn't a loan? What if it was an investment? What do you mean? We turn part of the barn into a proper bakery. I provide the space and materials. You provide the skill and product. We split the profit 60-40. Clara frowned. That's too generous. 40% of something is better than 100% of nothing, and right now that barn is just empty space costing me money in repairs. He leaned forward. Besides, if this works, everyone wins. You get your independence. I get income to fix this place properly, and Ivy gets to keep you. Clara wanted to argue, but the logic was sound, and time was running out. 50-50, she said. Equal partners or no deal. Cole's mouth quirked. You always this stubborn about people helping you? Yes. Fine. 50-50. He held out his hand. Clara shook it, feeling the calluses on his palm. A working man's hand. Honest. We start tomorrow, she said. I'll need to go into town, price out equipment, talk to suppliers. I'll come with you. You don't have to... Clara. His voice was gentle but firm. If we're partners, we do this together. Besides, some of those suppliers won't give a woman fair prices. You'll need backup. He was right, much as it galled her to admit it. Tomorrow then, she agreed. Cole nodded and stood. Get some sleep. It's late. But Clara stayed at the table after he left, staring at Victor's letter. She picked it up, reading it again by lamplight. Legal measures, sacred vows, your immediate return. The words were designed to intimidate, to make her feel small and powerless. Instead, they made her angry. She'd spent 10 years swallowing her anger, letting it curdle inside her until she couldn't remember what it felt like to fight back. But Ivy's voice, rusty and small but real, had changed something. Clara stood and walked to the stove. She held Victor's letter over the flame and watched it catch. The paper blackened and curled, turning to ash. Come find me, she whispered to the burning words. Let's see what happens. The next morning, Clara and Cole rode into Black Hollow in the ranch wagon. Clara wore her best dress, still plain, still practical, but clean and mended. She'd pinned her hair up carefully. Armor, she thought. That's what nice clothes were for women. Armor against judgment. The town looked different in full daylight. Still weathered, still dying, but there was more activity than she'd expected. A group of miners clustered outside the saloon. Railroad workers unloaded supplies. A few ranch families moved. They went inside together. The store was dimly lit and smelled like coffee and leather. Behind the counter, a thin man with suspicious eyes looked up. Mercer, back already? Morning, Hiram. Need to talk business. Hiram Pritchard's gaze slid to Clara. This the woman making that bread? Miss Sutton, yes. Heard about her. Pritchard's tone made it clear he'd heard more than just professional reviews. What can I do for you? We're expanding operations, Cole said. Going to need bulk flour, yeast, salt, sugar. Can you handle regular orders? Pritchard's eyebrows went up. How much bulk? Clara stepped forward. 50 pounds of flour twice weekly to start, 20 pounds of sugar, 10 of salt, yeast as available. That's a lot of baking. That's a lot of customers. Pritchard studied her. I can do it, but bulk prices aren't cheap. You got the capital? We will. Clara kept her voice level. What are we looking at per order? Pritchard pulled out a ledger and started calculating. The numbers he quoted were high, probably 30% over fair price. Claire had seen this before. Men assuming women didn't understand mathematics. Those prices seem elevated, she said calmly. The wholesale rate for flour in Denver is 6 cents per pound. You're quoting 12. Pritchard's face reddened. That's the Black Hollow rate. Transportation costs are the same for everyone. Yet I know you sell to the hotel restaurant for 8 cents. She smiled without warmth. I'm willing to pay 9 given our volume, but 12 is robbery. A moment of tense silence, then Pritchard laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. You got spine, I'll give you that. Fine, 9 cents, but I want payment up front for the first month. Half up front, Clara countered. Half on delivery. Standard terms. Most women don't know standard terms. I'm not most women. Cole had been watching the exchange with barely concealed amusement. Now he cleared his throat. So we have a deal? Pritchard nodded grudgingly. Deal. First delivery Saturday? Saturday, Clara confirmed. They shook hands, Pritchard's grip testing hers, finding it firm, and left the store. Outside, Cole let out a low whistle. Where'd you learn to negotiate like that? My father was a land record clerk. He dealt with suppliers and contractors daily. I paid attention. Clara adjusted her shawl. What's next? Blacksmith. We'll need racks built for the barn, and I want to ask about a better oven setup. The smithy sat at the far end of town, smoke rising from its chimney. Inside, a massive man with arms like tree trunks was hammering glowing metal. He looked up when they entered. Help you? Need some custom work, Cole said. Cooling racks, shelving, maybe oven modifications. The blacksmith set down his hammer. For what? Bakery, Clara said. Commercial scale. The man's eyes narrowed. You're the one making that bread everyone's talking about. I am. My wife bought a loaf last week. Said it was the best she's had since leaving St. Louis. He wiped his hands on his apron. Name's Dutch Werner. What exactly you need? Clara described her vision, the layout she'd been designing in her head for weeks. Wire racks for cooling, heavy shelves for storage, an expanded firebox for the oven that could maintain steady heat for hours. Dutch listened carefully, occasionally nodding. When she finished, he said, That's solid thinking. I can do it. But materials and labor won't be cheap. How much? He calculated, lips moving. $60. Maybe $70 depending on what I find for the oven work. Clara's heart sank. That was more than she'd saved. Can you do it in phases? Cole asked. We pay for the essential parts first, add the rest as money comes in? Dutch considered. Tell you what, you keep my family supplied with bread at cost. I'll work out a payment plan. Wife's been after me to eat better anyway. Deal, Clara said immediately. When can you start? Next week. Need to finish a job first, but then I'm yours. They shook on it and left the smithy. That's 2 down, Cole said as they walked back to the wagon. We're making progress. We're spending money we don't have yet, Clara corrected, but she felt something unfamiliar bubbling in her chest. Hope, maybe, or just the dangerous thrill of building something real. They were climbing into the wagon when a voice called out. Cole Mercer, heard you were in town. Clara turned. A man was walking toward them, mid-40s, well-dressed, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. 2 others flanked him, hired muscle, by the look of them. Cole's entire body went rigid. Voss. So this was Roland Voss, the land tycoon. Clara studied him carefully. Expensive suit, polished boots, manicured hands. A man who'd never done hard labor in his life. Heard you hired a housekeeper, Voss said, his gaze sliding to Clara. Enterprising of you, though I'm surprised you're putting money into that property. It's my property, Cole said flatly. I'll put money into it if I want. For now. Voss's smile widened. Though that situation may change soon. My records indicate your grandfather took out a substantial loan back in '72. Loan that's coming due. That loan was paid off in '79. My father settled it. Funny, my documents say otherwise. Voss pulled a folded paper from his jacket. According to this promissory note, the Mercer Ranch owes the Black Hollow Development Company $12,000 plus 30 years of interest. Cole's face went white. That's a lie. It's a legal document, properly notarized. Voss tucked the paper away. Of course, we could settle this quietly. I'm prepared to offer you $3,000 for the property, more than fair considering the debt. I'm not selling. Your choice. But when the bank forecloses, and they will, you'll get nothing. Think about your daughter, Cole. Where will she go when you're homeless? Clara had been quiet, watching the exchange. Now she spoke. May I see that document? Voss looked at her like he'd just noticed a fly. This doesn't concern you, ma'am. I work for Mr. Mercer. His debts affect my employment. I'd like to see the paperwork. Miss Sutton, Cole started. Please, Clara said quietly. Voss shrugged and handed her the paper, clearly amused. Clara unfolded it and read carefully. The document looked official, proper stamps, notarized signatures, but something nagged at her. The paper was too new, the ink too fresh, and the handwriting on the signatures looked identical. This is dated 1872, she said, but the paper stock is from the 80s. See the watermark? Voss's smile thinned. I'm sure there's an explanation. And these signatures, your grandfather and the lender supposedly signed on the same day, but the ink is identical. That doesn't happen with documents signed separately, even at the same table. Ink oxidizes differently. You're mistaken. I'm not. Clara handed the paper back. My father clerked land records for 20 years. I grew up reading these documents. This is a forgery, and not even a good one. Voss's face darkened. Careful, woman. You're making serious accusations. I'm making accurate observations. If you want to pursue this debt, take it to court. I'm sure a judge would love to examine the original loan documents. She paused. You do have the originals, don't you? The silence stretched. Then Voss smiled again, but it was a different kind of smile now. Dangerous. You're an interesting creature, Miss Sutton. Where did Mercer find you? That's not your concern. Everything in this valley is my concern. He stepped closer. I don't know who you think you are, but Black Hollow has a way of crushing outsiders who don't know their place. Is that a threat? It's a prediction. Cole moved between them. We're done here, Voss. Come near my ranch again and I'll meet you with a rifle. Voss laughed. No need for dramatics. I'm a reasonable man. I'll give you 2 months to reconsider my offer. After that, he shrugged. Well, the bank has its own timeline. He walked away, his men following. Clara waited until they were out of earshot. He's going to come after us. I know. Cole's jaw was tight. He's been buying up land across the valley for 5 years. Most ranchers can't fight him. He's got lawyers, judges, the bank, but his documents are fake. That gives us leverage. Leverage doesn't mean much when the courts are in his pocket. Clara watched Voss disappear around a corner. Then we don't fight him in court. Not yet, anyway. We fight him with the truth. How? We find the real loan records. Prove your father paid the debt. Make it so public that Voss can't bury it, even with corrupt judges. Cole looked at her like she'd suggested flying to the moon. The bank records from the 70s could be anywhere. Probably destroyed by now. Maybe, but land deeds get filed with the territory. So do loan satisfactions. If your father paid that debt, there's a record somewhere. Clara turned to him. We just have to find it before Voss destroys the evidence. And if we can't? Clara thought about Victor's letter, about running her whole life, about Ivy's voice saying don't leave. Then we fight dirty, she said, because I'm done letting men like him win. Cole studied her face for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Partners? He said. Partners. They climbed into the wagon and headed back to the ranch. Neither of them noticed the man watching from the alley beside the general store. He had a thin face and expensive clothes that didn't quite fit right in the frontier town. He waited until the wagon disappeared. Then he walked to the telegraph office and began composing a message. To Victor Hale, Boston, Massachusetts. Subject located. Black Hollow, Montana Territory. Advise next steps. The barn conversion started 3 days later. Dutch Werner arrived at dawn with a wagon full of iron and lumber, and by noon he'd sketched out a plan that made Clara's chest tighten with something close to excitement. "Oven goes here," he said, marking the dirt floor with his boot. "Chimney straight up through the roof. Work table here. Cooling racks along this wall. Storage in the back where it stays cool." Cole stood beside Clara, studying the layout. "How long?" 2 weeks if the weather holds. 3 if it doesn't." Dutch glanced at Clara. "You'll need help. Can't run a commercial operation alone." "I know." Clara had been thinking about this. "I'll ask around town, see if anyone needs work." "Ask Mateo," Cole said. Clara frowned. "Your ranch hand?" "He's more than that. Been with this family since before I was born. Worked for my father, stayed on after he died." Cole's voice softened. "He's the only reason this place didn't fall apart completely after Anne. He knows horses, cattle, carpentry, you name it, and he's loyal. I can't take your only help. The ranch work is light right now. Winter coming, cattle don't need much tending. He can split time between here and the bakery setup." Cole paused. "Besides, if Voss makes a move, I want someone I trust watching your back." The practicality of it made sense, even if Clara hated needing protection. "All right, ask him." Mateo appeared that afternoon while Clara was hauling water from the well. He was maybe 60, weathered and lean, with gray streaking his dark hair. He moved with the efficiency of a man who'd spent his whole life working. "Miss Sutton." He nodded respectfully. "Cole says you need extra hands. If you can spare the time." "I can spare it." He looked at the barn, then back at her. "You really think this bread business can work?" "I know it can. Question is whether we can make it happen fast enough." Mateo's eyes sharpened. "Fast enough for what?" Clara hesitated. Cole must not have told him everything. "There are some complications," she said carefully. "Time-sensitive ones." "Voss?" "Among other things." Mateo was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I've lived in this valley 40 years, watched Voss destroy good families, watched him steal land from people who worked it their whole lives." He met her eyes. "If you're planning to stand against him, I'm in." Something in his tone made Clara ask, "Did he take something from you?" "My brother's ranch, 5 years ago. Used the same fake debt trick. By the time we realized what was happening, the bank had already seized everything." Mateo's jaw tightened. "My brother hung himself in the barn 3 months later." Clara felt the words like a punch. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Help me make sure it doesn't happen to Cole and Ivy." He paused. "Now what do you need me to do?" They fell into a rhythm after that. Mateo worked mornings on ranch repairs, afternoons helping Dutch with the bakery construction. Clara baked before dawn, sold through mid-morning, then spent afternoons planning and testing new recipes. Ivy became her shadow, learning to measure ingredients and punch down dough. The girl's voice was still tentative, still rusty from disuse, but she spoke more each day. "Why does the bread need to rest?" she asked one morning, watching Clara cover a bowl of rising dough. "Because yeast is alive. It needs time to eat the sugars and make bubbles. That's what makes bread soft instead of hard." "Like how I needed time after Mama died?" Clara's hands stilled. "Yeah, sweetheart. Exactly like that." Ivy nodded seriously. "I think I'm still rising, but slower than bread." "That's okay. People rise at their own pace." The girl considered this, then went back to kneading her own small portion of dough. Clara watched her work and felt that dangerous hope bloom again. This could work. The bakery, the life, all of it. If Victor didn't destroy it first, the thought of him was a constant weight. Clara checked the mail obsessively, expecting another letter. But days passed with nothing. The silence felt worse than threats. On the 9th day, Clara was in town delivering bread when she saw the stranger. He stood outside the hotel, too well dressed for Black Hollow, watching the street with the careful attention of someone cataloging details. When his eyes landed on Clara, they lingered. She felt it like ice down her spine. She finished her deliveries quickly and headed back to the ranch. But the stranger's face stayed with her, the way he'd looked at her, like he was confirming something. "That night," she told Cole. "Could be anyone," he said, but his voice was tight. "Lots of people pass through town." He wasn't passing through. He was watching. You think it's the man your husband sent? I don't know. Clara paced the kitchen. But if it is, we're running out of time. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, The Territorial Records Office is in Helena, 3 days' ride. Clara stopped pacing. You think the loan records are there? If they exist anywhere, that's where. Territory requires all land transactions to be filed. Mortgages, sales, satisfactions. He paused. But I can't leave the ranch for 6 days, not with Voss circling. Then I'll go. Clara, I know how to read land documents. You don't. She turned to face him. And if that man in town is Victor's agent, he's watching you, not me. I can slip out at night, be gone before anyone notices. It's dangerous. The road to Helena. Everywhere is dangerous for me right now. Clara's voice was steady. At least this way I'm doing something useful. Cole looked like he wanted to argue. Instead he said, Mateo goes with you. He's needed here. Mateo goes or you don't. Cole's tone left no room for negotiation. I won't let you ride 3 days alone through territory you don't know, not with strangers watching the ranch. Clara wanted to protest. She'd been taking care of herself for months, but the hard truth was she didn't know this country, didn't know which roads were safe, which towns to avoid. Fine. Mateo comes. They left 2 nights later, well past midnight. Mateo had 2 horses ready, saddlebags packed with supplies. Clara wore her plainest dress and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed her face. Stick to the main roads until dawn, Cole said quietly, then cut north toward the foothills, less traffic. Clara nodded. She'd already told Ivy goodbye, though the girl didn't know why Clara was leaving or when she'd return, just that she had important work to do. Ivy had hugged her fiercely and whispered, Come back. I promise. Now Clara mounted her horse, a steady mare named Belle, and looked at Cole in the darkness. If that stranger comes to the ranch, I'll handle it. Cole's hand rested on the rifle at his side. You just focus on finding those records. 2 days there, 1 day searching, 2 days back. 5 days total. I'll keep bread going while you're gone. Won't be as good, but it'll keep the customers happy. Clara almost smiled at that. You've been practicing? Ivy's been teaching me. His expression softened. She's a good teacher. She learned from the best. They looked at each other in the dim light from the barn, and Clara felt something shift between them. Something that had been building for weeks, maybe longer. Clara, we should go, she said quickly. Lose time now, lose daylight later. Cole nodded, stepping back. Be careful. Always am. Mateo clicked his tongue and his horse moved forward. Clara followed, and together they rode into the darkness. The first day was long and cold. They rode through empty country, sagebrush and scattered pine, the mountains' dark shapes against the sky. Mateo set a steady pace, stopping only to water the horses and eat jerky from the saddlebags. He didn't talk much, which suited Clara fine. She needed time to think. If the records existed, she'd find them. She was good at this, had spent years helping her father track down disputed deeds and survey maps. She understood how territories filed documents, how to cross-reference dates and names. The question was whether Voss had gotten there first. Men like him had resources. If he'd forged the promissory note, he'd want to eliminate any evidence that contradicted it. That meant either destroying the original satisfaction of debt or paying someone to make it disappear. But territory offices were harder to corrupt than local banks. Too many clerks, too much oversight. If the document existed, there was a chance. They camped that night in a hollow between hills. No fire, eating cold food and sleeping in shifts. Mateo took first watch, his rifle across his knees. Clara lay on her bedroll and stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, Victor was planning his next move. And somewhere closer, maybe much closer, his agent was tracking her. She thought about the telegram that must have been sent. Subject located. Black Hollow. How long before Victor himself arrived? Would he come with lawyers and court orders, or would he try something else? Victor was patient when it suited him, vicious when it didn't. Clara had seen both sides. The memory of his hands around her throat surfaced unbidden. The way his face had looked, calm and cold, while he squeezed. You'll learn, he'd said. You'll learn to obey. Clara forced the memory down. That was the past. This was now, and now she had people depending on her. The second day brought them to Helena just as the sun was setting. The territorial capital was bigger than Black Hollow, more permanent. Brick buildings, paved streets, gas lamps starting to flicker on. They found a boarding house on the edge of town. Mateo paid for 2 rooms while Clara kept her head down, hat brim low. "Records office opens at 8, Mateo said when they were alone in the hallway. "I'll go with you. Better if I go alone. 2 people asking questions draws more attention than 1. Cole said to keep you safe. And you will, by staying here and making sure no one follows me when I leave. Clara softened her tone. I'll be in a public building surrounded by clerks and lawyers. Safest place I could be. Mateo didn't look happy, but he nodded. Anything feels wrong, you leave immediately. Promise. Clara spent the evening in her room preparing. She'd brought paper and pencil to copy records. She reviewed dates in her head. Cole's grandfather would have taken the loan in 1872. His father would have paid it off in 1879. 7 years. She needed to search both years, plus the years between, in case the satisfaction was filed late. The next morning, she dressed carefully. Plain but respectable. The kind of woman a clerk wouldn't question. The Territorial Records Office was a solid brick building near the Capitol. Inside, rows of filing cabinets stretched back into dim hallways. A young clerk sat at the front desk, looking bored. "Help you, ma'am?" "I need to review land records from Park County, specifically mortgage satisfactions from 1879. The clerk perked up slightly. "Legal matter?" "Family research. My employer's grandfather may have settled a debt that year. We're trying to confirm." "Name?" "Mercer. Property would be in the Black Hollow area." The clerk consulted a ledger, then stood. "Follow me." He led her through rows of cabinets to a section marked with dates. Park County, 1879. Satisfactions are filed alphabetically by debtor name. Mercer would be, He pulled open a drawer. "Here, you can review at that table. No removing documents from the building." "Of course, thank you." Clara waited until he left, then began carefully sorting through files. The records were comprehensive but disorganized. Satisfactions mixed with mortgages, some misfiled by year. Clara worked methodically, checking each document. An hour passed, then 2. She found Mercer Ranch transactions from the 1880s, sales of cattle, a fence dispute settlement, but nothing from 1879. Her chest tightened. Maybe it wasn't here. Maybe Voss had already... Wait. Clara's hand stopped on a document filed under N instead of M. The handwriting was cramped, the paper yellowed. Satisfaction of mortgage. Debtor. Mercer, James. Property, Section 12, Township 4, Park County. Original loan dated March 1872. Full payment received November 1879. There it was. Clara's hands shook as she carefully copied every word. The amount, the date, the notary's signature, the stamp from the bank confirming receipt of payment. Proof. Real, documented, filed with the territory. She copied it twice to be sure, checking each word. Then she carefully returned the original to its folder. When she emerged from the records room, the clerk looked up. "Find what you needed?" "Yes, thank you." "That'll be 25 cents for the search fee." Clara paid and left quickly, the copied documents folded inside her dress pocket. Outside, the morning sun felt too bright. She walked back toward the boarding house, forcing herself not to run. She'd done it. She had proof. Now she just needed to get it back to Black Hollow alive. She was 2 blocks from the boarding house when she felt it again. That crawling sensation of being watched. Clara slowed, pretending to examine a shop window while scanning the reflection. There, across the street, a man in a dark coat standing too still. Not the same man from Black Hollow. This one was older, harder. The kind of man Victor would hire for wet work, not surveillance. Clara's pulse kicked up. She kept walking, casual, like she hadn't noticed. The man followed. She turned a corner, walking faster now. The boarding house was 3 blocks away. If she could just reach Mateo. A hand grabbed her arm. Clara spun, ready to scream, but the man's other hand clamped over her mouth. He was strong, dragging her backward into an alley. "Mrs. Hale sends her regards," he hissed in her ear. "Time to go home." Clara bit down hard on his palm. The man yelped and his grip loosened just enough. She twisted, driving her elbow into his stomach. He doubled over and Clara ran. She made it halfway down the alley before he caught her again, slamming her against the wall. Pain exploded through her shoulder. "Stupid woman," he snarled. "Make this easy or make it hard, but you're coming with me either—" A gunshot cracked through the air. The man jerked back and Clara saw Mateo at the alley entrance, rifle raised. "Step away from her," Mateo said quietly. "Now." The man's hand went to his coat. Mateo fired again, this time close enough that brick dust sprayed from the wall beside the man's head. "Next one goes through your chest. Your choice." The man raised his hand slowly and stepped back. "Clara, come here." Clara pushed off the wall and stumbled toward Mateo. Her shoulder screamed, but she kept moving. Mateo kept the rifle trained on Victor's man. "You've got 10 seconds to disappear before I decide you're too dangerous to leave breathing." The man smiled without humor. "Mr. Hale won't stop. You know that, right? He'll send more. Better ones. Then they can try their luck, too." Mateo's finger tightened on the trigger. 10, 9. The man turned and walked away quickly. Mateo waited until he vanished around the corner, then lowered the rifle. "You hurt?" "Bruised. I'll live." Clara's hands were shaking. "How did you know?" "Saw him following you from the window. Figured it wasn't coincidence." He glanced at her pocket. "You find what you needed?" "Yes." "Then we leave. Now. Before he comes back with friends." They collected their things and were riding out of Helena within 20 minutes. Mateo pushed the horses hard, taking back roads and narrow trails Clara would never have found alone. They didn't stop until well after dark. That night, camped in a stand of pine, Clara finally let herself examine the documents she'd copied. The proof was real, solid, indisputable. But Victor had found her, and he'd sent someone willing to use force. "We need to move faster," she said. "Get this back to Cole, expose Voss before Victor makes another attempt." Mateo was cleaning his rifle by firelight. "You think the two are connected? Voss and your husband?" "No, but they're both threats. And I can only fight so many battles at once." Clara folded the documents carefully. "If we can eliminate Voss, at least Cole and Ivy are protected. Then I can deal with Victor." "By yourself?" Clara looked at him. "I won't bring this down on your family." "Cole's family is my family, has been for 40 years. Mateo set down the rifle. "And that little girl in there loves you. You think I'm going to stand by and let some Boston bastard drag you away?" The fierceness in his voice startled her. "You barely know me. I know you brought life back to that house. I know Ivy's talking again. I know Cole smiles now." He paused. "I know you're the kind of person worth fighting for. That's enough." Clara felt her throat tighten. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We still have to get home alive." They rode through the night and all the next day, stopping only when the horses were too exhausted to continue. Clara dozed in the saddle, jerking awake every time she started to slip. Black Hollow appeared on the horizon at sunset on the 5th day. Clara had never been so relieved to see those weathered buildings. They went straight to the ranch. Cole met them in the yard, his face tight with worry that eased when he saw them. "Any trouble?" "Some," Mateo said, "but we handled it." Cole's eyes went to Clara. "You're hurt." She'd forgotten about her shoulder. "It's fine." "Clara, I found the records." She pulled out the folded documents. "Proof your grandfather paid the debt, filed and notarized. Voss's promissory note is a fake, and we can prove it." Cole took the papers with something like reverence. He read them carefully, and Clara watched the tension drain from his face. "This is real," he said softly. "This is actually real. It's real. Now we need to use it before Voss can counter." "How?" Clara had been thinking about this the whole ride back. "We can't trust the local courts. Voss owns the judge. So we go public, make copies, send them to every newspaper between here and Denver. Let everyone know what he's been doing." "That'll make him desperate," Mateo warned. "Good. Desperate men make mistakes." Clara turned to Cole. "But we need to move fast, and we need to be ready for him to retaliate." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "There's a printing press in town. Old man Morrison runs it, prints the Weekly Gazette. He's honest. Hates Voss. Can we trust him?" "As much as we can trust anyone." "Then we go to him tomorrow, get this printed and distributed before Voss knows what hit him." They went inside. Ivy was asleep upstairs, but she'd left drawings on the kitchen table, pictures of Clara baking, of the three of them together, of the bakery taking shape in the barn. Clara looked at them and felt something harden in her chest. She'd run from Victor once. She'd let him make her small and scared and silent. But that was before she had people who needed her, before she had something worth protecting. Tomorrow they'd expose Voss. Then she'd deal with Victor. And this time, she wouldn't run. This time, she'd fight. Morrison's print shop sat on a side street that most people in Black Hollow forgot existed. The building leaned slightly, its windows gray with dust, and the sign out front had faded to bare wood. But when Cole pushed open the door, the smell of ink and paper hit Clara like a wall of possibility. An old man looked up from a typesetting table, squinting through thick spectacles. "Cole Mercer. Haven't seen you in months." "Been busy, Henry." Cole stepped inside, Clara and Mateo following. "Need to talk to you about something important, private." Morrison's eyes flicked to his two companions, then to the street outside. He moved to the door and turned the lock. "Something tells me this isn't about placing an advertisement. It's about Voss." The old man went very still. "I'm listening." Cole laid out the documents on Morrison's workbench. The forged promissory note, the territorial records Clara had copied, the dates, the signatures, the proof. Morrison read everything twice, his weathered hands shaking slightly. When he finished, he removed his spectacles and cleaned them with a rag, taking his time. "You understand what this means," he said finally. "Publishing this, Voss will come for me." "He'll come for all of us," Clara said. "But if we expose him publicly enough, fast enough, he won't be able to bury it." "You have a lot of faith in public opinion, young lady." "I have faith in the truth, and in people's anger when they realize they've been robbed." Morrison studied her. "You're not from around here." "No." "But you're willing to risk everything for a fight that isn't yours?" Clara thought about Mateo's brother hanging in a barn, about families losing everything while Voss got richer, about the way men like him and Victor moved through the world taking whatever they wanted. "It became my fight the moment I decided to stop running," she said. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to his typesetting table. "I'll need 3 hours, maybe 4. I can print 500 copies by morning. Make it 1,000, Cole said. We'll distribute them ourselves if we have to. 1,000 copies of evidence calling Roland Voss a fraud." Morrison's mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. "My wife always said I'd die doing something stupid. This is as good a cause as any." They left Morrison working and returned to the ranch to wait. The bakery construction was nearly finished. Dutch had built a brick oven that could handle 6 loaves at once, with racks and shelves that turned the barn into something almost professional. But Clara couldn't focus on bread right now. She paced the kitchen while Mateo cleaned rifles and Cole tried to figure out their next move. "Once the papers hit the street, we have maybe 6 hours before Voss responds," Cole said. "He'll go to the bank first, try to suppress the story. When that doesn't work, he'll come here." "Let him come," Mateo said calmly. "We'll be ready." "He won't come alone." "Neither are we." Mateo glanced at Clara. "How many ranchers has Voss hurt?" Morrison mentioned at least a dozen families in the valley. "Then we tell them. Show them the proof. Give them a reason to stand with us." Cole shook his head. "Most of them are terrified of Voss. They won't risk. They will if they see someone else standing first." Clara stopped pacing. "People don't fight alone. But if they see others willing to take the risk, they'll join. It's human nature. Or they'll let us burn and feel grateful it wasn't them." "Maybe." Clara met his eyes. "But we're out of options. We expose Voss or we lose everything. Those are the only choices left." Cole held her gaze and something passed between them, an understanding born of shared desperation. "All right," he said. "We make our stand." They spent the night preparing. Mateo rode to 3 neighboring ranches and spoke quietly with families Voss had threatened. Cole loaded every weapon on the property and positioned them throughout the house. Clara baked bread because her hands needed something to do, and the familiar motions kept the panic at bay. Ivy appeared in the kitchen around midnight, rubbing her eyes. "Why is everyone awake?" Clara wiped flour from her hands and knelt beside the girl. "Something important is happening tomorrow. It might get scary for a little while." "Are the bad men coming?" The question was so direct it stole Clara's breath. "Maybe." "The ones who want to take our ranch?" "Yes." Ivy considered this seriously. Then she said, Papa has guns. He does. And Mateo is really good at shooting. He taught me how to aim. Clara's eyebrows rose. Did he now? With a stick, Ivy clarified. Not a real gun, but he said I have good instincts. She paused. Are you scared? Clara could have lied. Should have, probably. But something about Ivy's dark, serious eyes made her tell the truth. Yes, I'm scared. But you're staying anyway. I promised I would. Ivy hugged her suddenly, fiercely. I'm glad you're here, even if it's scary. Clara held the girl close and felt something crack open inside her chest. This child had lost her mother, spent 2 years locked in silence and grief. And now Clara was bringing danger right to her door. But leaving would hurt Ivy worse. Clara knew that now. Go back to bed, sweetheart. Everything will be okay. You promise? Clara thought about all the things that could go wrong. Voss and his men, Victor's agents, the possibility that tomorrow could end with all of them losing everything. I promise I'll do everything I can to keep you safe. It wasn't the reassurance Ivy wanted, but it was honest, and the girl seemed to understand that mattered more. After Ivy went upstairs, Clara found Cole on the porch, staring at the dark mountains. She asked if the bad men were coming, Clara said quietly. What did you tell her? The truth. That they might. Cole's jaw tightened. I hate that she has to be afraid again. She just started feeling safe. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. He turned to look at her. This isn't your fault. Voss was circling long before you arrived. You just gave us a way to fight back. They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the wind move through the grass. After Anne died, Cole said suddenly, I thought about selling, taking Ivy somewhere new, starting over where nothing reminded us of what we'd lost. He paused. But this land has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather built that house with his own hands. My father died defending it from claim jumpers. And I kept thinking, if I run, what does that teach Ivy? That when things get hard, you just quit? Running isn't quitting, Clara said softly. Sometimes it's surviving. Is that what you were doing? Surviving? Clara thought about Victor's hands around her throat, the locked doors, the years of carefully swallowed fear. I was trying to, but I wasn't living. She looked at Cole. Here, with you and Ivy, I feel alive again. Terrified, yes, but alive. Cole's expression shifted into something Clara couldn't quite read. Clara, the sound of hoofbeats cut him off. They both tensed, hands moving toward weapons. But then Morrison's voice called out from the darkness. It's me. Don't shoot. The old printer rode into the yard on a sway-backed horse, saddlebags bulging. He disarmed stiffly and pulled out bundled newspapers. 1,000 copies, he said, handing them to Cole. I added a front-page editorial explaining the evidence. Names, dates, everything. Cole unfolded one and read by lamplight. Clara looked over his shoulder and felt a surge of fierce satisfaction. Morrison had printed the territorial records in full. Below them, a detailed explanation of how Voss had been forging documents to steal land. And at the bottom, a call to action. Every family in the valley deserves to know the truth. This is perfect, Clara breathed. It's seditious is what it is, Morrison said dryly. But sometimes truth requires a little sedition. He glanced at the house. You're ready for what comes next? As ready as we can be. Good. Because I saw Voss's men loading wagons when I left town. Whatever he's planning, it's happening soon. Morrison left after refusing an offer to stay. I'm an old man, he said. If Voss wants to come after me, let him try. But you've got a child to protect. Keep your attention here. After he rode away, Cole and Clara distributed newspapers throughout the house, evidence that couldn't be destroyed easily. Mateo took a stack to hide in the barn. The rest they'd deliver to neighboring ranches at first light, but first light never came. Just past 3 in the morning, Clara heard the rumble of wagon wheels. She was in the kitchen, unable to sleep, when the sound registered. At first she thought she'd imagined it, then it grew louder. Multiple wagons, moving fast. Cole! She shouted. He appeared from upstairs, rifle in hand, Ivy behind him. Get her to the cellar. I want to stay with you, Ivy said, her voice shaking. Not this time, little bird. Cole knelt and pulled her close. You go with Clara. You stay quiet. And if anything happens to me, Papa, if anything happens, you do exactly what Clara says. Understand? Ivy nodded, tears streaming down her face. Clara grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her toward the kitchen. The cellar entrance was hidden under a rug, a dark, narrow space that smelled like earth and old vegetables. Down, Clara said. Now. What about you? I'm coming, but first I need to... Glass shattered in the front room. Clara heard men shouting, heavy boots on the porch. She shoved Ivy toward the cellar stairs. Go! Don't come out until it's safe. How will I know when it's safe? You'll know. Clara slammed the cellar door and threw the rug back over it just as three men burst into the kitchen. She recognized one of them, Marcus Webb, one of Voss's hired thugs. The other two were strangers, but their intent was clear from the clubs in their hands. Well now, Webb said, smiling. The bread woman. Where's Mercer? Not here. Don't lie. We saw him in the window. Webb stepped closer. Here's how this works. You tell us where those documents are, we burn them, and maybe we don't burn the house down with you in it. Clara's mind raced. The documents were everywhere, dozens of copies scattered throughout the building. Even if she wanted to surrender them, she couldn't. Go to hell, she said. Webb's smile widened. Wrong answer. He nodded to the other men. They moved toward her. Clara grabbed the cast iron skillet from the stove and swung it with everything she had. It connected with the first man's skull with a sickening crack. He went down hard. The second man lunged. Clara swung again, but he was faster, grabbing her wrist. The skillet clattered to the floor. Then a gunshot exploded through the kitchen. The man holding Clara jerked and fell. Behind him, Matteo stood in the doorway, smoking rifle in hand. Evening, gentlemen, he said calmly. You're trespassing. Webb drew a pistol. Matteo fired first. Webb dove behind the table as the bullet splintered wood above his head. Clara, go, Matteo said. Find Cole. Clara ran. The front room was chaos. Cole was fighting two men near the door, using his rifle like a club. Furniture lay broken, papers scattered everywhere. One of Voss's men saw Clara and turned toward her. She didn't think, just grabbed an oil lamp from the side table and threw it. The lamp shattered against his chest. Oil spread across his shirt. Don't move, Clara said, pulling matches from her pocket. Or I light you up. The man froze. Cole used the distraction to slam his rifle into the other attacker's jaw. The man crumpled. Where's Ivy? Cole demanded. Cellar, safe. Clara kept the matches trained on the oil-soaked man. How many are there? At least 6, maybe more. A shout from outside, then the sound of breaking glass from upstairs. They're torching the house, Cole said. We need to get out. They heard footsteps above them. Smoke began filtering down through the floorboards. Clara's heart seized. The cellar. If the house burns, it's got an outside entrance. Ivy knows where it is. Cole grabbed her arm. But we need to stop them before the whole structure comes down. They ran for the stairs. Smoke was thicker now, acrid and choking. Clara pulled her sleeve over her mouth and pushed forward. The second floor was an inferno. 2 of Voss's men were splashing kerosene on the walls, touching off fires that spread with terrifying speed. Cole fired twice. One man went down. The other dove through a window, glass shattering around him. We can't save it, Matteo shouted from below. The whole place is going up. Cole stood frozen, watching his family home burn. 3 generations. His grandfather's hands in every beam. Cole! Clara grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. We have to go. Now! Something in her voice broke through. He nodded and they ran back downstairs. The front door was blocked by flames. They went through the kitchen, past Webb's body. Matteo had finished him, and out into the night. Ivy was already outside, emerging from the cellar's exterior door, her face streaked with soot and tears. Cole ran to her and lifted her into his arms. You're okay. You're okay. The house burned behind them, flames licking toward the sky. Clara watched it and felt something like grief, even though it wasn't her home to lose. Then she heard the horses. 6 riders emerged from the darkness, and at their center was Roland Voss himself. He sat astride a black stallion, looking every inch the conqueror. Well, he said, voice carrying over the crackle of flames, That's unfortunate. Old house like that goes up so fast. Cole set Ivy down carefully and raised his rifle. You're finished, Voss. We have proof of your fraud. It's already distributed. You mean those papers? Voss gestured to one of his men, who held up a stack of Morrison's newspapers. Found most of them. The ones we didn't find will be discredited by morning. I've already spoken to the territorial marshal, told him you've been spreading libel, trying to damage my business. The records are real, filed in Helena. Records can be disputed, especially when the people making accusations are known criminals. Voss's smile was poisonous. See, I've done my research on your housekeeper Mercer, Mrs. Clara Hale of Boston, wanted for theft and abandonment of marital duties. There's a reward for her return. Clara's blood turned to ice. That's right, Voss continued. I know all about you, and so does your husband. In fact, I've sent word to him about your location. I imagine he'll be very grateful. You bastard, Cole said. I'm a businessman. Voss's eyes never left Clara. And you, Mrs. Hale, are going to do exactly what I say. Because if you don't, I'll make sure your husband knows about the little girl you've been playing mother to. Ivy, isn't it? Sweet child. Be a shame if she got caught up in legal proceedings about custody and corruption of minors. Ivy pressed closer to Cole, and Clara felt rage crystallize in her chest. You leave her alone, she said, her voice deadly quiet. Then you leave. Tonight. Disappear so thoroughly that Mercer can claim he never knew your real identity. Do that, and I'll let him keep what's left of his ranch. Refuse, and I'll destroy all of you. Clara looked at the burning house, at Cole's devastated face, at Ivy clinging to her father. This was the choice she'd been running from all along. Save herself or save them. There was no middle ground. No, she said. Voss's smile faded. What? I said no. Clara stepped forward. You think you can threaten us into submission? You think we'll just scatter because you burned a house? She pulled folded papers from inside her dress, copies of the territorial records she'd kept on her person. These documents are real, and they're not just in Black Hollow anymore. I sent copies to newspapers in Denver, Helena, and San Francisco 3 days ago. By now, journalists are already investigating. You can kill us, but you can't stop the truth from spreading. Wait, ma'am, it was a bluff. She hadn't sent anything anywhere, but her voice never wavered. Voss's face darkened. You're lying. Am I? You want to take that chance? Clara met his eyes. Because here's what I think. I think you're not half as powerful as you pretend. I think you've been bribing small-town judges and intimidating frightened families, but the moment someone fights back with real evidence, your whole empire crumbles. Clara, Cole whispered. What are you doing? Calling his bluff. She kept her eyes on Voss. You're not here to negotiate. You're here because you're scared, because for the first time someone has proof you can't make disappear. Voss's hand moved toward his pistol. Then shots rang out from the darkness, not aimed at them, aimed over Voss's head. Riders emerged from multiple directions. Clara recognized faces from town. The hotel owner, the blacksmith Dutch Werner, families from neighboring ranches, even old Morrison, looking half dead but sitting tall in his saddle. That's far enough, Voss, Dutch called out. His rifle was steady. We've all seen the documents. We know what you've been doing. This is none of your concern, Voss snapped. It became our concern when you started stealing from our neighbors. A woman rode forward. Clara recognized her from the general store. My husband's ranch. You took it 4 years ago with fake papers just like you tried to do to Mercer. I lost my farm, another voice called. My family lost everything. More voices joined in. A chorus of rage that had been building for years, finally given direction. Voss looked around, and for the first time Clara saw real fear in his eyes. You're all making a mistake. The only mistake was not standing up to you sooner, Cole said. He stepped forward, rifle raised. You're going to leave, tonight, and you're not coming back. You can't. We can. Mateo's voice was cold as winter. Because if you don't leave, if you ever come near any of these families again, we'll make sure you face real justice. Federal justice. The kind you can't bribe or threaten your way out of. Voss looked at the circle of armed riders surrounding him. His men were outnumbered 3-1, and they knew it. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is, Clara's voice cut through the night. You're finished here, and if you're smart, you'll disappear before the law catches up with what you've done. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Voss yanked his horse's reins and rode into the darkness, his men scrambling to follow. They watched until the hoofbeats faded. Then, slowly, the tension broke. Dutch lowered his rifle. Well, that was something. Thank you, Cole said, his voice rough. All of you. I don't know how... Morrison told us what you found, the hotel owner interrupted. Told us you were willing to stand up to Voss when none of the rest of us had the spine. Least we could do was back you up. The woman from the general store rode closer. That true what Voss said? About you being wanted? Clara met her gaze steadily. Yes. For what? Leaving a man who beat me, taking nothing but what belonged to my grandmother. Clara's voice didn't shake. The law says that makes me a criminal. I say it makes me a survivor. The woman studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Law isn't always right. Anyone with eyes can see you're good for this family. She glanced around at the others. We didn't see you here tonight, Mrs. Hale. Don't know anyone by that name. One by one, the other riders nodded agreement. Clara felt her throat tighten. Thank you. People began dispersing, riding back to their homes. Morrison lingered long enough to say, I'll print a retraction about you tomorrow. Say the information was false, fed to me by Voss to discredit the land fraud story. After everyone left, the three of them stood looking at the smoking ruins of the house. Ivy had fallen asleep against Cole's shoulder, exhausted by fear and adrenaline. We can rebuild, Mateo said quietly. House is gone, but the barn's intact. The bakery. The land. Cole nodded slowly. Yeah, we can rebuild. But Clara was staring at the horizon, where the first gray light of dawn was breaking. Because she knew the truth, Voss might be gone. The immediate threat might be over, but Victor was still out there, and now he knew exactly where to find her. You said, Part 5, lưu ý, viết 6.000 đến 6.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện và hội thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Part 5, lưu ý, viết 6.000 đến 6.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện và hội thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề. Tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột. Không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ. Phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc. Kể theo ngôi thứ 3, giữ đồ kịch tính không viết lan man, có quan điểm cá nhân, thông điệp, bài học, góc nhìn con người. Nhân vật không hoàn hảo, hội thoại tự nhiên, tránh ngôn ngữ văn chương sáo rơi và cụm từ AI điển hình. Viết như nhà văn chuyên nghiệp, không như AI cố gắng nghe sàng. Có yếu tố con người, cấm miêu tả qua mượt mà và hoàn hảo. Phần 5 giải quyết hết vấn đề và kết thúc trọn vẹn câu chuyện. Câu chuyện không nhắc đến Chúa, lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn không nhảy sang document. Chi đan bắt buộc, không được xuất hiện trong nội dung truyện. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu được tạo ra chỉ nhằm mục đích giải trí, không đề cập hay ngụ ý rằng nó dựa trên sự kiện có thật, người thật hoặc câu chuyện có thật. Không sử dụng các cụm từ như dựa trên một câu chuyện có thật, theo ghi chép hoặc bất cứ điều gì tương tự. Tất cả các nhân vật, địa điểm, tổ chức và sự kiện phải hoàn toàn hư cấu. Show more. 9, Darren 30. Claude responded. Part 5, Part 5. The telegram arrived 4 days after the fire. Clara was in the barn bakery, her hands deep in dough, when Cole appeared in the doorway holding the yellow paper like it might explode. It's from the Helena Telegraph Office, he said. Addressed to you. Clara's hands stilled. She knew before she read it, had been waiting for this moment since Voss rode away. She wiped her hands and took the telegram. The message was brief, written in Victor's secretary's precise script. Mrs. Hale, stop. Mr. Hale arrives Black Hollow, November 12th. Stop. Prepare for return to Boston. Stop. Legal proceedings authorized. Stop. November 12th. That was tomorrow. Clara folded the paper carefully and set it on the work table. Then she went back to kneading. Clara, Cole's voice was tight. Did you read it? He's coming tomorrow. Then we prepare, same as we did with Voss. This isn't the same. Clara's hands moved mechanically through the dough. Voss was a thief hiding behind fake documents. Victor has real legal authority, real lawyers, Real court orders that say I'm his property and he has every right to take me back. You're not property. The law disagrees. She shaped the dough into a smooth ball and set it aside to rise. In Massachusetts, a wife who abandons her husband can be institutionalized, declared mentally unfit. Victor has doctors who'll sign whatever papers he wants. He's probably already filed them. Cole was quiet for a moment. So what do you want to do? The question surprised her. Not what are we going to do, but what do you want? Clara looked at him. He stood backlit by the open barn door, his face shadowed but his posture somehow protective and patient at the same time. I want to stay, she said. I want to keep baking bread and teaching Ivy and building something real here. I want to stop running. Then stay. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Cole stepped closer. You want to stay, so you stay. We'll deal with whatever comes. He'll destroy you for helping me. He has money, connections. I don't care. You should care. You have Ivy to think about. I am thinking about Ivy. Cole's voice rose. My daughter loves you. She calls you Mama when she thinks no one's listening. You think I'm going to let some Boston bastard tear that away from her? From any of us? Claire's breath caught. She calls me what? Mama. Cole's expression softened. Started about a week ago. She doesn't do it to your face because she's afraid you'll leave if she gets too attached, but she draws pictures of the three of us and writes my family at the bottom. Clara had to sit down. She sank onto a flour sack, her legs suddenly unreliable. I can't be her mother, she whispered. I'm nobody's mother. You're the person who taught her to bake, who held her through nightmares, who made her feel safe enough to speak again. Cole crouched in front of her. You're exactly her mother, Clara. In every way that matters. Tears burned behind Clara's eyes. What if I fail her? What if Victor takes me and she loses someone else she loves? What if you stay and she gets to keep you? Cole, I love you. The words landed between them like a stone in still water, ripples spreading. Clara stared at him. What? I love you. Cole's voice was steady now, certain. I think I have for weeks, maybe longer. I love the way you attack problems like they're enemies to defeat. I love how you never do anything halfway. I love that you're stubborn and fierce and absolutely terrifying when someone threatens what's yours. He paused. And I love that you see me and Ivy and this broken ranch and decided we were worth fighting for. Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. You don't have to say it back, Cole continued. You don't have to feel the same way. But I needed you to know. Before tomorrow. Before whatever happens, happens. I needed you to know that you matter. To me. To us. Clara reached out and touched his face, her flour-dusted hand leaving white prints on his jaw. I'm terrified, she said. I know. Of him. Of failing, of being the reason your life falls apart. Our life, Cole corrected gently. And it won't fall apart. Not if we stand together. Clara wanted to believe him. Wanted it with an intensity that hurt. He's going to bring court orders, she said. Legal documents that say I'm mentally unfit, that I stole from him, that I'm a danger to myself. He'll have witnesses who will swear I was hysterical, violent, unstable. Were you? I fought back once. Threw a vase at his head when he came at me. Claire's voice was flat. He had 3 doctors sign statements saying I was dangerously unstable. Had me locked in our bedroom for a week while he decided whether to have me committed. Cole's hands curled into fists. How did you get out? I apologized. Begged. Promised I'd be good. The memory tasted like poison. I played the obedient wife for 2 more years while I planned my escape. Saved every penny I could hide. Waited for him to trust me again. And then you ran. And then I ran. Took nothing but my grandmother's starter and the clothes on my back. Left him a note saying I'd rather die alone than live one more day as his wife. Cole was quiet for a long moment. He's going to use that note against you. Proof of instability. Probably. And the stealing charge? I took $40 from his desk, money I'd earned doing bookkeeping for his business, work he never paid me for because wives don't get wages. Clara laughed bitterly. But legally, that's theft. Everything I touched was his property, including me. Cole stood and began pacing. We need a lawyer, someone who can fight him on legal ground. With what money? The house burned. We barely have enough to rebuild. Then we get creative. He turned to face her. You said Victor has doctors who'll lie for him. Can we find doctors who'll tell the truth? What truth? That you're sane, competent, capable of making your own choices. Cole's eyes were bright now, thinking. We document everything. Get statements from people here, Dutch, Morrison, the families you've been feeding. Prove that you're not some hysterical woman. You're a businesswoman who's been supporting yourself and contributing to the community. Clara felt a flicker of something. Not quite hope, but close. It might not be enough, she warned. It might not, but it is better than nothing. He paused. And if it comes down to it, if he tries to take you by force, he'll have to go through every person in this valley. Because they know you now, Clara. They know what you did to expose Voss. They're not going to stand by and watch you get dragged away. Clara stood and pulled him close, pressing her forehead against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong. I'm afraid, she whispered. So am I. His arms came around her. But we're afraid together. That has to count for something. They stood like that until Ivy's voice called from outside. Papa? Clara? Are you in there? They separated quickly. Ivy appeared in the doorway, her hair in braids Clara had taught her to do herself. What's wrong? The girl asked, reading their faces too well. Cole and Clara exchanged a look. Then Clara knelt down to Ivy's level. Remember how I told you I left someone back east? Someone who wasn't kind to me? Ivy nodded seriously. He's coming here tomorrow. He's going to try to make me go back with him. No. Ivy's voice was sharp. You can't go. You promised. I don't want to go, sweetheart, but sometimes adults have complicated rules. Then we'll fight. Ivy's hands fisted at her sides. Like we fought Mr. Voss. We'll all stand together and tell him no. Clara's throat tightened. It's not that simple. Why not? Because he has papers that say I belong to him. Legal papers. Papers can be wrong. Ivy's chin lifted. You proved Mr. Voss's papers were wrong. We'll prove his are wrong too. The simple clarity of childhood logic. Clara wished the world actually worked that way. I'll try, she said, but I need you to understand something. If he takes me tomorrow, it doesn't mean I want to go. It doesn't mean I stopped loving you. It just means the law is on his side. That's a stupid law. Despite everything, Clara smiled. Yes, it is. Then we should change it. Maybe someday we will. Ivy hugged her fiercely. Don't let him take you, please. Clara held the girl and made no promises she couldn't keep. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in the small room off the barn, her bedroom now, since the house was gone, and listened to the wind outside. Tomorrow, Victor would arrive. He'd have lawyers, probably hired muscle, definitely court documents. He'd be calm and reasonable and utterly merciless. That was Victor's way. And he'd expect to find the broken woman he'd spent 10 years creating. Clara got up and lit a lamp. She pulled out paper and began writing. The words came slowly at first, then faster. Everything she'd never said, every truth she'd swallowed. She wrote about the first time Victor hit her, about the years of carefully managed terror, about learning to make herself small and quiet and invisible. But she also wrote about leaving, about the sourdough starter that connected her to 4 generations of strong women, about finding this valley and this family and this version of herself she'd forgotten existed. She wrote until her hand cramped and the lamp oil ran low. Then she folded the letter and addressed it to the territorial judge in Helena. Not the local judge. Voss had proved that man was corrupt. But the territorial authority who'd already seen evidence of fraud in this valley. It was a long shot. Probably wouldn't matter. But Clara had learned that long shots were sometimes all you had. Dawn came too fast. Clara baked bread by habit, her hands moving through familiar motions while her mind spun. Cole and Mateo checked rifles and positioned themselves strategically. Ivy stayed close to Clara, helping with the baking but saying little. The stage from Helena was due at noon. At 11:30, riders appeared on the horizon. Clara watched them come from the barn doorway. 6 men on horseback, moving with the confidence of people who knew the law was on their side. Victor rode at the center. Even from a distance, Clara recognized his posture. Straight-backed, controlled, every movement calculated for maximum authority. She'd once found that attractive. Now it just made her sick. Cole appeared beside her. That's him? That's him? He looks like every rich bastard I've ever met. He is every rich bastard you've ever met, just with better lawyers. The riders stopped in the yard. Victor dismounted with practiced grace. He wore an expensive suit, completely inappropriate for Montana territory, and his boots were polished to a mirror shine. His eyes found Clara and locked on. "Clara." His voice was smooth, cultured, the voice of a man used to being obeyed. "I'm glad I found you well. When you disappeared, I feared the worst." Clara stepped out of the barn, Cole beside her. "I'm not going back with you, Victor. I'm afraid that's not your decision to make." He pulled papers from inside his coat. "I have court orders from Massachusetts declaring you mentally unfit and requiring your return for medical evaluation. These orders are recognized by federal law." "Those orders are lies. They're signed by 3 physicians and a judge." Victor's smile never reached his eyes. "I understand you've been through some kind of episode. It happens to women sometimes. The stress of managing a household, the isolation. But I'm here now, and we'll get you the help you need." "I don't need help. I need you to leave me alone." Victor's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Clara, darling, you're embarrassing yourself. These people have clearly been enabling your delusions, but that ends now." "She's not delusional," Cole said. "She's been running a successful business here, supporting herself, contributing to the community." Victor finally looked at Cole, his gaze dismissive. "And you are?" "Cole Mercer. This is my ranch." "Ah, the widower who hired my wife as a housekeeper." Victor's tone made it sound sordid. "I appreciate you providing shelter for her during her unfortunate episode. I'll make sure you're compensated for any trouble she caused." "She's not trouble. She's family." "She's my wife." Victor's voice hardened. "And I'm taking her home." One of his men stepped forward, hand moving toward Clara. Cole's rifle came up. "Don't." The man froze. Victor sighed. "Mr. Mercer, I understand frontier hospitality, but you're interfering with a legal matter. I don't want trouble." "Then leave." "I can't do that. Clara is ill. She needs medical attention. These delusions she's been having, that I abused her, that she had to flee, they're symptoms of a serious condition." He turned back to Clara, his voice softening in a way that made her skin crawl. "Please, darling, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Come home. Let me take care of you." Clara looked at him. Really looked. At the perfect suit and the practiced concern and the absolute certainty that he would win, because he always won. And something broke loose inside her. "No." Victor blinked. "What?" "I said no." Clara's voice was steady. "I'm not sick, Victor. I was never sick. I was trapped. There's a difference." "Clara, you broke 3 of my ribs in 1883, cracked my collarbone in 1885, gave me a concussion in 1887 that left me unconscious for 6 hours. Her voice didn't shake. "You locked me in our bedroom for days at a time when I displeased you. You controlled every penny, every friend, every moment of my life. And when I finally found the courage to leave, you called me insane. Those are lies. They're the truth. And every scar on my body proves it." Victor's composure cracked slightly. "You fell. You were clumsy." "I was beaten, systematically, for 10 years. Clara stepped forward. "And I'm not going back. Not for your lawyers, not for your court orders, not for anything." Victor's face went cold. "You're hysterical. Men, restrain her." His hired men moved forward. Cole and Mateo raised their rifles. "I wouldn't," Mateo said calmly. Then hoofbeats sounded again. More riders cresting the hill. Dutch Werner, Morrison, the families from neighboring ranches, the hotel owner and the general store woman, and at least 20 others. They formed a semicircle around the barn, blocking Victor's escape routes. Victor looked around, and for the first time Clara saw real uncertainty in his face. "What is this?" he demanded. "This is a community," Dutch said, "and we don't take kindly to men who hurt women. I have legal authority." "You have papers from Massachusetts." Morrison's voice was harsh. "They don't mean much in Montana territory, especially when we have papers of our own." He held up documents. Clara recognized her letter to the territorial judge, but there was more. Statements from people in town, medical evaluations from the doctor in Black Hollow, business records showing Clara's bakery income. "We sent these to Helena 2 days ago," Morrison continued. "Asked the territorial judge to review your claims about Mrs. Hale's mental state. He found them unconvincing." Victor's jaw tightened. That's irrelevant. Federal law, Federal law says a woman can be institutionalized if she's a danger to herself or others. The voice came from behind the crowd. A man pushed forward on horseback, older, authoritative, wearing a badge. Territorial Marshal Hendricks, he introduced himself. I've reviewed the evidence from both parties, and I've interviewed witnesses here in Black Hollow. He looked at Victor. Your wife isn't a danger to anyone except possibly you, Mr. Hale. And frankly, from what I've heard, you had it coming. Victor's face went purple. This is outrageous. You can demand whatever you want back in Massachusetts. Hendricks cut him off. But here, you have no authority. And if you try to take Mrs. Hale by force, I'll arrest you for assault and kidnapping. She's my wife. She's a person, and she's made her choice clear. Victor turned to Clara, and she saw it in his eyes, the same rage he'd shown her hundreds of times before, the look that always preceded violence. You'll regret this, he said quietly. I'll ruin you. I'll make sure everyone knows what you are. A survivor? Clara met his eyes without flinching. Go ahead. Tell everyone. I'm done being ashamed of your violence. Victor stared at her like she'd become a stranger. Maybe she had. You were nothing when I met you, he hissed. You'll be nothing without me. I was never nothing. Claire's voice was strong. I was just convinced I was. But I built myself back up from ash and flour and spite, and I'll keep building long after you're gone. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Victor jerked his horse's reins. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Marshal Hendricks' voice was final. You're going to return to Massachusetts and file for legal divorce. You're going to let Mrs. Hale go. And if you ever come near her again, if you ever threaten her or this community, I'll make sure you face federal charges for what you've done. Victor looked at the circle of armed riders, at the marshal, at Clara standing tall beside Cole. He must have realized he'd already lost. You'll die alone, he said to Clara, broken and forgotten. Clara almost laughed. I'd rather die alone than live one more day with you. Victor's face twisted. Then he turned his horse and rode away, his men scrambling to follow. They watched until he disappeared over the horizon. Then the tension broke like a snapped wire. People started talking, dismounting, coming forward to shake Clara's hand. That took courage, the general store woman said. That took community, Clara corrected. I couldn't have done it alone. Marshal Hendricks approached. I meant what I said. If he comes back, we'll handle it legally. But I suspect he won't. Men like that hate being humiliated. He'll go home and pretend this never happened. Thank you, Clara said, for everything. Thank your neighbors. They're the ones who flooded my office with testimonials. He tipped his hat. Welcome to Montana Territory, Mrs. Sutton. The use of her grandmother's name, the one she'd taken when she fled, made Clara's eyes burn. After the marshal left, Cole pulled her aside. You did it, he said. You actually stood up to him. We did it, Clara corrected. All of us. What happens now? Clara looked at the barn bakery, at the people still gathering, talking, celebrating, at Ivy running toward her with arms outstretched. Now we rebuild, she said. The house, the business, everything. And us? Cole's voice was quiet. What about us? Clara took his hand. That depends. Are you still willing to have a divorced woman with a complicated past as a business partner? I was thinking more along the lines of a wife. Clara's breath caught. Cole, I know it's fast. I know you just got free of one marriage and probably never want to think about that again. He spoke quickly, like he was afraid she'd stop him. But I love you. Ivy loves you. And if you'll have us, I want to build a life with you, a real one, where you're safe and valued and free to be exactly who you are. Clara looked at him, at this man who'd given her a chance when everyone else saw only her size and plainness, who'd stood beside her against Voss and Victor, who'd taught her that not all men wanted to break the things they claimed to love. Yes, she said. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you, when my divorce is final and legal and real. She paused. But I want a partnership, Cole. Not a traditional marriage where you own me, a real partnership where we make decisions together. Deal. He was grinning now. Anything else? I keep my own money. I keep my business. And if you ever raise a hand to me or Ivy, I'll shoot you myself. Fair terms. Cole pulled her close. I can work with that. Ivy reached them and grabbed both their hands. Is he gone? The bad man? He's gone, sweetheart. Forever? Clara knelt and looked Ivy in the eyes. Forever. Ivy threw her arms around Clara's neck. Does this mean you're staying? Really staying? Really staying. You'll have me. Can I call you Mama? Clara felt tears spill over. I'd be honored. The rebuilding started the next day. The house took 3 months to reconstruct, built larger this time with a proper kitchen and separate bedrooms. The whole valley contributed: labor, materials, time. They raised walls together and hammered shingles and turned loss into something better than what had burned. The bakery expanded. Clara hired 2 women from town who needed work and taught them her grandmother's recipes. Within 6 months, they were shipping bread as far as Helena and Denver. Morrison printed the full story of Voss's fraud in his Gazette. The resulting investigation led to criminal charges and the return of stolen land to families throughout the valley. Voss himself fled to California and was never seen in Montana territory again. Clara's divorce from Victor came through the following spring. He didn't contest it, probably wanted the whole embarrassment forgotten. She heard later that he'd remarried within a year some young society woman from Philadelphia. She hoped the girl had better luck than she'd had. Clara and Cole married in May, in the new house, with Ivy as their witness. It wasn't a traditional wedding, no church, no white dress, no promises to obey. Just 2 people choosing each other, legally and completely. Morrison published the marriage announcement with unconcealed satisfaction. Local businesswoman, Clara Sutton. Weds, rancher Cole Mercer. The woman who rebuilt herself builds a family. The bakery became something more than bread. Women fleeing bad situations found their way to Black Hollow, drawn by stories of a woman who'd escaped and survived. Clara hired them when she could, taught them skills, helped them find their feet. She understood what it meant to rebuild from nothing. She'd done it herself. Years later, when Ivy was grown and running the bakery herself, she asked Clara what the secret was. How do you start over when everything's broken? Clara thought about it carefully. You begin with what you have, not what you've lost. For me, it was a jar of sourdough starter, a living thing that needed care, that connection to women who came before me. But you lost everything else. I lost a life that was killing me. That's not the same as losing everything. Clara paused. The real secret is understanding that you're never starting from zero. You always carry something forward, skills, memories, strength you didn't know you had. You just have to find it and feed it and let it grow. Ivy nodded slowly. Like bread rising. Exactly like bread rising. You mix flour and water, and it looks like nothing. But if you give it time and the right conditions, it transforms into something that feeds people, something that matters. Did you know it would work when you came here? Clara shook her head. I had no idea. I was just trying to survive one more day, but somehow those days added up to a life. She looked around the kitchen, twice as large as the original, gleaming with new equipment, smelling of yeast and possibility. Through the window, she could see Cole working with Mateo to repair a fence. Still building. Always building. You know what I learned? Clara said. People will underestimate you your whole life. They'll see what you look like and assume they know who you are. They'll try to make you small and quiet and convenient. What do you do about it? You build something so undeniable they can't ignore it anymore. You take flour and water and starter, the humblest ingredients, and you turn them into something people need, something they'll line up for, something they'll remember. Clara pulled a fresh loaf from the oven and set it on the cooling rack. That's the real magic, she said. Not that bread rises, but that we rise. That we can be broken down to nothing and still rebuild ourselves into something stronger than we were before. Ivy looked at the bread, golden and perfect and still steaming. I'm glad you came here, she said quietly. I'm glad you stayed. Clara pulled her daughter close. Not the daughter she'd given birth to, but the daughter she'd chosen and who'd chosen her back. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Outside, the sun was setting over the valley. The mountains went purple against the sky. Smoke rose from chimneys in town. The world kept turning, indifferent to individual struggles. But here, in this kitchen that Clara had built with her own hands and her own stubborn refusal to disappear, something had been created that mattered. Not because it was perfect, not because the road had been easy, but because when the world tried to break her, Clara had looked at what remained and decided it was enough to start again. She'd arrived in Black Hollow carrying nothing but a wooden box and desperate hope. They'd laughed at her before her feet touched the ground. Too big, too plain, too broken. They'd seen her all wrong. What they hadn't seen was that broken things know how to mend, that plain exteriors can hide extraordinary strength. That size means nothing compared to the courage it takes to rebuild yourself from ash. Clara Sutton had come to Black Hollow to hide. Instead, she'd learned to stand. And in standing, she'd taught an entire valley that the people we underestimate are often the ones who change everything.